morning, Giants. Welcome to Wake Up with Giants TV. I'm Ryan Morris here with your host, Nick Smith. And guess what today is? We have a very special day because we have an Olympic medalist here. Team USA. I'm wearing my full USA onesie. My
USA.
Nick, will you introduce our guest this morning?
Not yet, man. We got to see that outfit. So you got to stand up and show the whole outfit.
Okay, hold on. I'm going to try not to make my whole background fall over and stuff. Okay, here we go. This comes the onesie. You get to see everything here.
And everyone scream, America.
Yeah, America. There's
America.
The shoes.
Look at those legs, man.
Yeah.
You need some sun, brother.
Yes, I do.
I can't tell where the white stripes are.
just keeps going.
It just keeps going. Well, guys, we got a really, really special guest on the show today, Bill Schuffenhauer, Olympic medalist. He helped break a 46-year drought for medals in bobsledding for the USA. Just an incredible story. We're going to dive into that. Your childhood wasn't easy. We're going to go into your childhood. We're going to talk about your history. The whole goal with this is to show people that we all have giant potential and that no matter where you start in life, you have the ability to choose the outcome. And so we want to welcome you to the show. Thanks for being on here.
Oh, my gosh. Thank you guys for giving me the opportunity, and it's an honor. And Ryan coming with the full-blown outfit, it doesn't get any better than this.
I can hear the chants in the background. Yeah. USA.
I feel like I'm on this podium stand right now, about to receive my medal again.
Yeah.
The onesie outfit.
Oh man. What I love about Ryan is he's got an outfit for everything. So we're all set, man.
Yeah.
Well, good. You good if we dive into your story? Your bio was amazing, but I want to hear it from you.
Yeah, absolutely.
What it was like growing up. So your childhood. Can you go into that?
Yeah, absolutely. As the bio reads, it's a fairly interesting story. I was a kid who grew up here locally in Salt Lake City, Utah. But I was born into a family maybe a little bit different than most. I had a mom who is addicted to drugs, lived that typical street lifestyle. She would have been the person that you saw on the corner panhandling for money. If not, always doing drugs, into prostitution, just into that street life. And, that was my norm growing up. So just, seeing that lifestyle day to day, seeing, the drugs in the house, people coming in and out of the house, living off the state, sometimes not having a place to live, 17 different foster homes, gangs, tons of violence. And my life in reality was just chaotic for anybody, let alone a young kid, right? And, for me at the time, like I mentioned, that was just normal. I didn't know anything different. So, when people would look at me different, I didn't even know why they were looking at me different, because I was like, well, what are you talking about? This is how life is. And, I was definitely the kid that most people wouldn't allow their kids to hang out with, because I was always getting in trouble as well. And, drinking and doing drugs with my mom and my stepdad at a very young age. We live here in Utah, so I can say our family home evening was a little bit different.
In Utah, they'll get what that is, but everywhere else, they're like, I don't get your jokes. They're not that funny.
Outside Utah, if you're not sure what family home evening is, you can hit me up on Facebook and I'll explain.
Yeah, right.
Detail. But it was like that, just bouncing all over, never really having a place to call home at a young age, all the way until about 7th grade. And I was, again, as I mentioned, doing drugs and stuff with my family. I did a drive-by with my stepdad and my mom on a motorcycle one time, and I didn't really know that stuff was not normal until I got older, and people were starting like, wow, that's crazy. And I'm like, well, don't you guys do all these weird things too? And obviously, that's just not a normal life. And so at one point in time, my mom had gotten in trouble again, and this was just typical, right? She'd either get in trouble for doing drugs, prostitution, or in trouble with the law in some way, shape, or form. And my stepdad was a part of it this time as well, which was also typically normal. But this, the cops came by, took my mom and my stepdad away. And of course, DCFS came by and called my grandma at the time and just gave her an option like, hey, he's either going to go to his 18th foster home or we're going to give you an opportunity to take him in, which in the past, my grandma had done in the past also. And so she had moved up to Roy at this time. And, I was never lived anywhere else except basically Salt Lake, Rose Park, ghetto areas of the valley. And so fortunately enough, my grandma was willing to take me in, and I moved up to Roy, which was a huge experience. And honestly, that's probably the turning point for me, because when I went into Sandridge Junior High School in Roy, Utah, with just a massive afro like this, and I had a tore up like Metallica shirt and just like stood out like a sore thumb. But I just remember walking into Sandridge Junior High on day one, and there were nothing but like wholesome, nice looking, clean cut, white kids everywhere, and everyone was happy go lucky. And I was like, whoa, this is really weird. Because it just wasn't something I was used to. And I remember that first feeling. It was like, wow, I don't fit in here. Like I don't belong. But I there was an energy about all these kids though, too, that I just, obviously because it was different, that I really was attracted to. And from that point on, I was just like, okay, how do I fit in? It's hard enough being a young kid, 7th grade, going to a new school to make new friends. But now you're a kid of color. You've got this big giant afro. You're a street kid who's used to causing trouble and getting in trouble all the time, which wasn't really a thing up there back then. But at that age, I took notice of a kid named Jake Schultz. He was basically like the all-American looking kid. Even at 7th grade, he was the kid that everyone liked. He played all the sports. He was part of the student body. And he just had this energy about him that was just really, really attractive to me. And I just was like, man, I want to know what that feels like. Because I was used to, getting in trouble with the law, doing drugs, gangs, trouble, getting kicked out of school for doing stupid stuff all the time, getting held back, you name it. And so it was the first time I had an opportunity to see something different in life, and starting to, I guess, that was my first opportunity to see a role model, if you will, and try and figure out how do I attain that, just like today, anything that, we do when we're having, a hard time, our kids sometimes, well, my son, looks up to LeBron James as a role model. He wants to be like him. I just did it, but it was more going from my lifestyle to like, just maybe some normalcy of a normal kid who has a normal family. So I literally was kind of a joke around. I was a stalker, if you will, at 7th grade. But I followed this kid Jake around all the time and just kind of watched like how he interacted with everyone. And one day after school, I followed him outside, and he was out there in the field with a whole bunch of other kids, and they were, running around the field and throwing things and jumping over things. And I was like, wow, am I, what do I have that could apply to this? And, in my head, the first thought was like, I'm good at running from cops and jumping fences, so I could do what these guys are doing for sure.
Yeah.
And that was my first thought, again, as a 7th grader, like, okay, turn a negative, of my lifestyle into a positive. And so, it was too late for that year because it was already, they were already in progress, but I knew like next year I'm going to go out for the track team. And so I did. And, honestly, I didn't change anything in my lifestyle between 7th and 8th grade. I was still hanging out with kids, partying, getting in trouble and drinking and doing drugs and breaking into cars and all that stuff. But when it came to it, I went out for track my 8th grade year, and it was exciting because it was the first time that I, for the most part, belonged to this group of kids. And it was just cool, like, to be out there and, the coach, like, hey, you guys come over here and try this and let's go do that. And I was having a phenomenal time. I was going from, I didn't even know what I was doing. I was just high jump, hurdles, long jump, javelin, 4x100. I was just all over the place because it was just a lot of fun and something I wasn't ever used to. So completely out of my comfort zone, but really enjoyed it. And so I made like almost all the cuts. And in my head, I was like, oh my gosh, if I enjoy this track and field, I noticed on the other field next to us, baseball tryouts were going on. So I was like, oh, I'm going to go do baseball too, right? So, because that's what as a kid, that's what I saw on TV was baseball. And so, yes, Nicole, sports have, played an instrumental role in my life. And so I go out and do baseball tryouts. And so I missed a day of practice for track and field. And so the next day I go back to track practice and the coach comes up to me and he's like, hey, where were you yesterday? And I was like, well, what do you mean? He's like, well, we had track practice and we were supposed to work on handoffs and everybody was looking for you. Nobody knew where you were. And I was like, well, I went to baseball tryouts. And he's like, okay, well, that's fine and dandy, but, this is a team. And next time it'd be helpful if you let us know where you were. And, there's that saying that you can take the kid out of the streets, but you can't take the streets out of the kid. And so I had a few choice words for the coach and basically told him in a different language. I didn't need to tell him,
I know how you feel. I grew up in the mean streets of Murray.
Right? It's hardcore. So
their gang sign is like whatever it is, like whatever.
I can't even do an M. It's not the west side, it's the Murray side.
Yeah.
Before we continue, hang on to where you're at.
Yeah,
I want to highlight your journey here because and I'm going to pull up an image of the book here real quick just to highlight this. You're talking about this looking up moment, like your life is going a certain way. I don't know if you can see that.
Yeah.
So the giant, he's looking up at the Giants. He sees this guy named Jake Schultz, right?
Yep.
He's like, there's got to be more to life. How can I do that? Can I do that for me?
Yeah.
And, it just becomes one of those things that we each get to ask that question, like, how can I do that?
Right.
And so in that you start exploring, you go out on this path and you join track and field. And now you're out on this path that you've never been on before and you're learning new things. And then you see baseball. You're like, well, what else can I do? Right. And so you do baseball and I love it because you're looking at the possibilities. Your life was a certain way, but you had this turnaround moment of there's got to be more to life than this. And it's Jake Schultz, right? Did I say that right?
Correct.
Gives you an example of what's possible for you in the 7th grade.
Yeah.
This is before he's even pursued his life or career. He's just being a 7th grader, just showing up. Yeah. I mean, that's amazing. So, the journey is just one, waking up, and that's different for everybody. You might have multiple. I wrote about this morning. You might have multiple moments through your life where you have an awakening where it's like, there's got to be more to life than this.
It took me to like 39 3/4, and I turned 40 in February. So,
hey, I feel you. I'm 47, looking at around the corner being 48, and I still have those waking moments in life. Not that we want to jump too much into it, even with COVID, but COVID has affected everybody around the world, and those that have learned how to adapt and pivot to the COVID situation. Those are the ones who are going to continue to strive. And I've had to do the same thing, as a motivational speaker. My whole year got completely wiped out by COVID and several other things. And so I'm continuously, even today, and that's why I want people to understand is like, you're never ever, you don't ever reach the top and stay there because there's always something next, and there's always.
I've heard that from a Nick Smith before.
Yeah,
that's awesome. Yeah,
and it's always an ongoing growth process. You're forever learning, and I, even as an athlete, being at the top of my game as an Olympian in bobsled and being one of the very best in the world. There was always something I could still learn from coaches and other athletes. And that's what helped me continue to progress, not only as an athlete, but also in life today. So
I love it. So you have the choice words with your coach, right? so let's keep that story. Let's keep going with that.
So I basically, had those choice words for him and I just went off into baseball practice because like, well, I can make baseball. And so I go over to baseball practice and I'm, hey coach, what's going on? You know, what are we going to work on today? Pitching, hitting. I'm, you know, super excited. And he's like, hey, yeah, come here for a second. And so I, go jumping over there and like, hey, what's up? And he's like, so I had a conversation with the track coach and kind of let me know what was going on. And I was like, oh yeah, he was just mad because I wasn't there. And he's like, well, this is a team and we all work together and we communicate together to help one another out. And with that type of attitude, he's like, honestly, I'm just going to not welcome you onto the baseball team either. In a quick minute, right? Like all my, they weren't even goals and dreams at that point in time, but it was the enjoyment of being a part of something all came crashing down. And it was that, falling off the horse or whatever analogy we want to use, but I got kicked off the horse and landed straight on my face. And, with that, it was a big awakening call for me to kind of take a step back and do what we know now is kind of an after action review, right? Like, what did I do wrong or what was I doing right? Or, what could I have done different? And for me, the foundation of what I wanted to do was in reality is change my stars. I wanted to go from being this kid who was never, ever supposed to amount to or ever achieve anything. Even if, maybe if I even made it to, still being alive at the age of 16, to actually be a part of something bigger than me and more important to me that, I can engage in and enjoy. And, I failed and I didn't fail anyone else except for myself. Right. And so I kind of had to go back to the drawing board. And not only that, I mean, at the time, my grades were I had all F's and a D minus. So I was doing really, really well. So I wouldn't have made either one of the teams anyway. But, I kind of sat back and, I remember talking to my grandma and, kind of letting her know what happened. And it was just like, well, I don't know what to do. And my grandma's, my most of my family comes from Spain. So my grandma speaks Spanish and she's like, Mijito, like, if you want to make a change and you want some help, go to your coaches and your teachers. And I was like, why would I do that? And she's like, well, they've done it before and they've helped like other kids. And, that's what they're there is to help you. And I took Gam's advice and, that following, not too long after I got kicked off the baseball team and the track team, I went to the coaches and my teachers and I was like, hey, this is who I am and this is what I would like to do, but I just don't really have the tools or the resources to get to where I want to go. And I said, would you guys, can you help me? And lo and behold, they were wanting to go out of their way to help me out. And so, I mean, it was to the extent where I had teachers staying after school to help me get my grades up, so that I could just have, better grades. And I went from, in that summertime that they spent with me from all S and a D minus to the following ninth grade year, the 3.8 grade average.
Wow.
But, what had to change first and foremost, as you guys know, was my attitude, right? And being vulnerable to other ideas and realizing that my way was not really the way that was working out. And so being vulnerable enough to be open to these ideas that the teachers and coaches had for me. And I just really attached myself to that and the things that they wanted to teach me and go out for the track team. And I left baseball alone. But I went out for track team my ninth grade year and it was just absolutely phenomenal. Again, I was able to go and do all the events and that's what kind of started my career in track and field because I was like, doing the high jump and doing the shot put and doing the 100 and doing the 400 and doing the relays. And I only did it because I just thought it was fun. I didn't even care the pain that came after running the 400 meter dash or anything. I was just a kid out there with a big afro and my silk dolphin shorts at the
time. Yeah.
Do this. I'm gonna go find me some old silk Dolphin USA shorts, Ryan. And,
yes.
You know what I picture is Reno 911.
Yeah.
Sheriff.
Yes.
These type plum huggers, whatever they are. Yeah,
for sure. So
I'd wear those.
Yeah, I know you would.
So, my ninth grade year was literally kind of that pivotal point for the rest of my career. And when I went up to Roy High that year after, you know, I didn't know exactly what I was going to do. I obviously now had made a whole new group of influential friends, and had to, you know, let me not skip this. I had to take a lot of the old friends that I was dealing with, gangs, you know, guys in gangs and troublemakers, and I had to like let that life go. So I detached myself from those group of friends because it just wasn't serving me, as a young kid, even though this wasn't my language back then. But you know, I just had to change, you know, my environment, if you will, and change my architecture. And so I did, and it was hard because all those friends are like, you know, you think that they're your family, right? And
Yeah,
but it is what it is. You know, they want you to be involved because of the things that they do, and getting in trouble just wasn't obviously going to serve my purpose or serve my vision and my goals. And so, you know, I get to the high school, and Coach Mike Hine and Coach Neville Peterman, who were the coaches at the time up at Roy High, approached me, and they're like, "Hey, we've been watching you, down at Sandridge, and noticed that you were doing all these different events, and you know, we want to introduce you to this, sport within track and field called the decathlon." And I was like, "Well, what is a decathlon?" And they start like this, okay, well, it's, you know, they get all excited because they're just having an opportunity to explain, you know, what they do in their sport. And they're like, you know, it's considered like one of the best. Yeah, Roy High for life. Awesome. Uh, love that. You know, they're like, oh, it's one considered, you know, one of the best athletes, and it's competed over 2 days, and you're doing the 100, the long jump, the shot put, the high jump, the 400, 110-meter hurdles, discus, pole vault, javelin, 1,500 meters. And I'm like, that just sounds like a lot. And they're like, oh, but, you know, it's amazing. You're the first guy on to practice and the last guy to leave. And I was like, whoa, this like doesn't sound fun anymore. This is just way too much. I just want to run and have fun. And they're like, well, the decathlete is considered one of the best athletes in the world. And mind you, I wanted to change my stars. So right when they said that, I was like sold. You know, let's go be this decathlete, whatever it is. And so, you know, I think that was probably the best, route for me, because it took not just a little discipline, it took a massive amount of discipline to try and master 10 events and bring them all together, and put it out on the field and compete over 2 days, and do really well with it. And so I got kind of dumped into this world of, you know, if you're not doing really well across the board and being, you know, disciplined and committed and have like solid integrity, you're not going to be good, and you're not going to ever achieve this goal of being one of the best athletes in the world. And, you know, I loved it. I mean, I just loved having an opportunity to not just compete in one event, but compete in 10 events. And Diana, very nice to meet you as well. And it just really kind of set me up for who I am as a person today. Because I had to be committed, and I had to study, and I had to practice, and I had to have focus. And, you know, the world of the decathletes is we're like a really tight knit family. And if you're not a cool guy, or heptathlete for women, if you're not a cool girl willing to like give and be collaborative and be supportive, like you just don't fit in. And for me, that just really worked out, again, to who I am today, because I had to be all those, and I had to have a solid integrity, as an athlete, and being willing to collaborate and give and help other people out, whether it's coaches or other athletes. And so that, again, another pivotal point in my life, to want to be able to do that. And then, so sorry.
you're good.
And, you know, I had a, you know, not to take too long in my high school and my college career, but I had a phenomenal career, you know, state champions in the decathlon, national champion in high school in decathlon, ranked #1 in the world,
Wow.
received, you know, one of the biggest national awards in the Quaker Oats Gatorade Athlete of the Year award. And you know, when I was getting ready to graduate high school, had letters to every university on the face of the planet. But in between there, you know, when I kind of jumped over between 9th and 10th grade, I did get adopted by a military family that was also a huge blessing, because, you know, my family life was so chaotic, bouncing from my mom to, you know, foster homes to my grandma. And when I got adopted by the Hendersons, they were a military family. So you now bring in massive structure, right, into this kid's life who had zero structure. And and it was difficult. It was hard, but again, it really helped me to develop into who I was today, and learn how to be a good kid, and do my chores, and get up and make my bed, and just some of the simple basic things that we need to know as human beings.
So I'm gonna pause you for a minute because I want to highlight your journey again. I want to pull this in so that you can see. We're going to send you the book. I don't think you've read it yet. A lot of people that are in the tribe, they don't even know what the Tribe of Giants is about yet. And so
sometimes I don't even know.
This interview highlights it. I mean, the whole book is designed around your journey and what I'm hearing in this. So I'm going to go back in time here. I'm going to share from your message what you're saying and show how this applies, because I mean, you're living it. You're living the Giants journey. Like, you decided, I'm going to change my stars. And so you step out onto this path in the unknown. Gam Gam comes along and she says, you need to get a mentor.
Love Gam Gam. She's smart.
Yeah. So you go climb to the shoulders of these giants, these teachers and others, and you start asking for help, and you take and turn your grades around, and they show you a vision. Let me just pull this over here of what's possible for you. And then you start to grow into it. And there's
you have to put your old life on hold, right? Like, you got to let it go.
Yeah.
And move past it, because they're like, you got to ditch that garbage that you're stuck in.
Well, what I'm hearing too is you became a giant. By the time you leave high school, you became a giant. And it's still, you weren't at your pinnacle. It's like, I became a giant in this area. You had all these awards, you had all these scholarships waiting for you. You became a giant. And then it became, well, what else is possible? Right? Because this isn't the end of your story. I mean, if you could have ended your story and said, I did awesome in high school, I'm done for life.
Yeah.
And some people do.
Yeah.
But you didn't. So keep going. So you come out and you're feeling accomplished. You're a champion.
Yeah. And so, my adopted family, right before my senior year, got their military orders to go to Misawa, Japan. And I remember us talking and having a conversation like, oh, well, you're going to have to go. And I'm like, I'm not going to go to Japan high school and run track. And so my track coach was like, hey, why don't, he made a recommendation. He's like, well, it's his last year, he's doing really well, blah, 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 in school, and doing really well in sports. Why don't you just stay here and live with us? And so, my adopted parents agreed, and I ended up living with Coach Neville Peterman and his family my senior year of school, which, you go from your military discipline to, imagine living with your coach who's always telling you, like, you have to get this done, not only for sports when you're on the field, but now they're there 24/7 when you go home. Hey, did you get your homework done? Well, you're the coach and the teacher, so they already know what's going on. So, there wasn't any opportunity to bend the truth or hide anything, because it was all out there on the table. And so my senior year, I lived with my track coach, and that turned out to be just a phenomenal opportunity. But the big difference, because I always mention, it's, I had opportunities to go to any school in the country. But my track coach in high school and Weber State's track coach were best friends. And so, long story short, I ended up going to Weber State on a track scholarship. I had both track and football, but we decided to focus just on track. That's because everything was going really, really well. So ended up going to Weber State, and had a great career at Weber State. Just continued that, like, how far can we take this decathlon thing? And by this time, obviously had some not only local but national and global recognition as this kid in high school who, I think at the time I had the sixth best high school score in the nation historically. And so, just had some accolades, and I didn't know how good I was. I'll be honest with you. I was just having fun. But just continue that, that Weber State and go Wildcats. And, and so, it turned out to be like, I was the guy that would go to all these competitions, and during conference championships, I would go and compete in a decathlon. And then I would also compete in like 6 more events in the open meet. So, at times I was the guy who scored half the points for our team to win the championship meet.
Yeah.
And that was just such a good feeling, man. I can't even express to you like how cool that was to be like, almost in a military sense, the Marine that goes in first to the competition and sets up our team for success for the rest of the meet. And that was just such an enjoyable time to be a part of a team that, relied on you. And, again, I constantly reflected back on where I came from, and never lost track of that. Right. Because the foundation of who I am was a street kid. I came from the hood, and that was my foundation. And so I always reflected back on that and utilized that as a positive to ensure that everything I did day to day, I appreciated it to the highest level. And it really kept me, kept me from being like, I guess, the cocky athlete or whatever, I
was going to ask you on that, because you go from a street kid, a gangster, in a way, like no structure at all, pure chaos, to complete structure, success. I'd imagine, when you reflect back, it's from a space of gratitude of, that life, that is still a possibility. At any point you could turn around and reopen that pathway and become that, right?
Yeah.
You have this commitment to not go there. You have this appreciation for that experience. And it's almost, you're not looking at it from a space of fear. I hope I don't go back to that, because you're so far beyond that. You're so far above that now.
Yeah.
It's just an appreciation for how far you've come. Am I right on that?
No, you're dead on. And, there was no question, literally from day one, when I made the track team, there was no question that there was no turning back then.
Yeah.
Because I knew that I had found my place. And I honestly, I just really enjoyed the camaraderie, and I just enjoyed the competition. Like, still today, 47 years old, retired and somewhat decrepit when I try to get out of bed in the morning.
Yeah.
But I still wake up with that thought in my head, like, what am I going to do today, and what can I achieve, and what can I create today? And it's that competitive edge that I gained over the years that, still lives with me today. And, the other thing for appreciation too, is I want, people to understand, because this is same with my life as well as anyone else's life, is that, I could provide you with the best opportunities in life. I could provide you with the best information in life. But at the end of the day, it's still going to be your choice whether you want to do that or not. And back then, it was still a choice for me. Do I want to continue to be this disciplined, structured athlete, or do I want to go back and be this troublemaker kid? I'm thankful, obviously, that I had an amazing tribe, if you will. No pun intended.
We know. We've got an amazing tribe too. It's good.
Yeah.
I like your fun.
Giants around me that help support me and encourage me and just help me find that person inside that was truly inside me, right?
That's it right there, right? It was always inside of you.
Oh, absolutely.
Right? You just had to, sometimes you have to recognize that your giant potential has always been inside of you, for that to start to come out and shine, and to believe in yourself, and you can be, do, or have anything that you want to have.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Up here and right here, right? Well, that's right. The chest.
Yeah. And that's the thing too. We just need to let people know that it's always inside you, but sometimes we have to declutter all the BS that we've surrounded ourselves with. Right. And it's not anyone else's fault. We've got ourselves into that position. Now, maybe some people have played a role in the chaos that we've created for ourselves, but once you could recognize it and take some accountability for it, you can start decluttering all that stuff out of your life, and then create a new path for yourself. That's
I love that. Your journey from there. So you, and we're at 9:35, so we've still got some time. So we're going to dig in if you're good.
Oh yeah.
that looking at that path, going from there to the Olympic path, can you talk a bit about that journey? What even opened up that as a possibility? Did you see that on the horizon?
We had talked about it here and there, and I'd heard other athletes talk about it more so like when I was in college, because one thing that I didn't talk about after high school, I wasn't even going to go to college because I was like, I'm going to be like the rest of my friends and go get a job and McDonald's and make money and get a car and do all those things. But thankfully, again, I had a great group of people around me that said, hey, like you could actually go to school and have your school paid for, and continue to open up opportunities. And I remember, asking the coaches, like, what's next after high school? What's next after college? Like, what is the pinnacle of the decathlete? Because I already knew the decathlete's considered one of the best athletes in the world, but how do I get to where that platform is to be one of the best athletes in the world? Yes, I'm a decathlete and I'm doing well, but where's that Valhalla, if you will, to get there? And that's really,
hang on to that, because I'm going to interrupt you because that's what I do. And you're just going to have to deal with it. No, but hang on to that. So how do I get to that next level? Is these questions that you ask, this is so important, because the types of questions you're asking are going to answer your life and you're going to live into those answers. And so if you're asking, why is my life so effed up, or why can't I do these things, you're going to get answers that tell you all the reasons why you can't, and you're going to stay that way. But when you say, how can I go to the next pinnacle? How can I grow? What else is possible for me today? And what can I live into? I just want to highlight that before you move on. Your power with questions is incredible, because you can tell you live this daily because the way you ask these questions. And so I just wanted to hit on that. That's it.
Yeah.
So,
no,
all right. You remember where you left off?
Yeah. I mean, that's
all right.
Who I am. Is I ask a lot of questions because I just want to know. Right. And it's that continuing, not only, it's that life education, and the more you ask, the more you can try and find a way to figure out life. And it makes it a lot easier as well. So, the coaches start talking about the Olympics, right? And in my head, I'm like, gosh, that's a long time, every 4 years. And, they just laid it out. They're like, well, you know what? If you're a decathlete, you're considered one of the best athletes in the world. But if you're a decathlete that makes it to the Olympics, you've now solidified your name in history. And I say that with, like, honestly getting chills in my body right now, because I was like, I can go from literally being a kid who was worthless, didn't mean anything to anyone, was never expected to accomplish anything, to literally solidifying my last name in history books that'll never, ever, no one can ever take that away. That can never be changed. And I was like,
holy cow.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so again, it was a no-brainer. And, again, I had a great career at Weber State University. Thankful for the coaches and the teachers that put up with me back then. But we then started, focusing on the 1996 Olympics. And, at the time, this is where I started learning about, how important it was of surrounding myself with just awesome, awesome people. And so I started researching, and I already knew that Dan O'Brien, if anybody out there knows the Dan and Dave Reebok commercials back before the 96 Olympics. But these were two Americans who were the very best in the decathlon, continue to break, world records left and right. But there was this big Dan and Dave campaign. And one of those athletes, Dan O'Brien, happened to train up in Moscow, Idaho.
I like the pause there. That was perfect.
Because I've told people I trained in Moscow before, and they're like, wow, how is Russia? And I'm like, it's Idaho. But, back then we didn't have
like potatoes.
Right, exactly. We didn't have the internet and the access that we do to the rest of the world like we do today. And so I literally wrote a letter, handwritten letter with a pencil and a paper, licked the envelope, put a stamp on it, and sent it to the mail to Dan O'Brien's coach, Mike Keller, who was the coach up at the University of Utah. And 3 weeks later, I get a letter back saying, hey, we'd love to have you. And so I jumped on a Greyhound bus from Ogden, Utah to Moscow, Idaho, which was the worst ride I've ever been in my life, in the middle of winter. And went up there to train with literally some of the best athletes on the face of the planet. And, that was a great experience. But it is what it is. I'm a homebody. I am a Utahn to the core, and I wanted to come home. And, I was too young to make the 96 Olympics. So I ended up coming back to Utah and training with my coaches at Weber State, preparing for the 2000 Sydney Olympics. And, it is what it is. And, obviously if we had 6 more hours to talk about it, we could talk about all the other chaos that I got into.
We can create that. Yeah.
He's like,
but, because I had a lot of hurdles that I ran into throughout the years as well, too. And, but when I came back to Utah, I was like, okay, this is finally it. I'm going to buckle down. I'm going to stop with the excuses, because as human beings, we're really good at feeding ourselves a bunch of BS and believing it, which leads us down like the wrong path. And then once we get down that path, we're like, how do we get there? And I was just like, all right, no more of this. I'm going to, like Hulk Hogan says, say my prayers and eat my vitamins, and I'm going to live, the path and eat well. And I'm not going to go, out and hang out and party. And it started to really pay off, because, our first meet of the year prior to the 2000 Sydney Olympics, up at Utah State, I went to do a decathlon, was the first athlete that year worldwide that scored over 8,000 points, was the 51st American in history to score over 8,000 points, I believe. And so that qualified me for Olympic trials right away. And we knew, like, I remember just finishing that decathlon, and my coaches and my teammates were like, wow, he's done it. Like, this is going to happen. He's going to Olympic trials. And, we had a phenomenal year that entire year getting ready for the Olympic trials prior to Sydney. We did another decathlon, just to make sure that we're still staying tuned. I scored about another 120 points on top of what I scored earlier. But right before Olympic trials, I was ranked number 5 in the world. And we were like, this is finally it. The whole changing your stars is finally going to happen. The sacrifices and all that stuff is finally going to pay off. This is it. We are going to the show. And so it wasn't just my camp with myself and my teammates and my coaches and my family. Everybody knew. Media knew it. I mean, the track and field world knew it. And we were super excited about this opportunity. And so 2 weeks before Olympic trials, we're like, okay, let's do another warm-up competition at BYU. And we'll just do kind of a walkthrough, make sure that, the gears are oiled, and, we're just going to, fine tune everything. And so we're down at BYU, and, we run the 100-meter dash, and, we're not even worried about points at this point in time. And in comes the long jump, and I'm a good long jumper. I'm a 750-meter jumper. For those that don't know, it's 24-foot plus long jumper. And I'm coming down the long jump board, and it's raining, and my foot hits the track and slides, and my foot rotates, and then my spikes catch, and I literally nearly ripped my ankle off. And I remember just face first in the sand and feeling this absolutely tremendous pain coming from the bottom of my leg, and thinking, this is not happening right now. And, coaches and trainers and stuff come running over, and they're like, what's going on? And I was like, I don't know. So I look at my ankle, and, doesn't look great. It's not mangled, but I'm like, one of the worst pains of my life. And, a learning lesson here is that we went into panic mode, and what I want everyone to realize is, like, we didn't have to do this competition because we'd already qualified for trials, and we're going to go. But we went into a panic mode, and, asked the trainers to shoot my ankle up with numbing agent, literally wrapped my ankle like a cast. And we're like, all right, we got to do the shot put now. So, which was a problem because I rotated in the shot put. So I pivoted on that ankle as well. So that caused some more issues and more pain. But the real nail in the coffin is that when we came to the high jump after the shot put, that's the same ankle that you just jumped off on the long jump board and tore it up. And we're like, okay, but we got to get a height. We got to get a height. We went into this crazy panic mode. And the reality is we should have like stopped and said, okay, what are we really trying to accomplish here? Let's really figure this out. But we didn't do that, unfortunately. And I tried to do 3 jumps on an ankle that was, for the most part, absolutely a disaster, and just did more damage. And that 3rd jump, just like the previous 2, I just hit the bar and fell into the pads. And I remember that 3rd one laying on the pads, because it had been raining and I'm wet and I'm looking up at the cloudy sky, and the realization that my Olympic dreams literally had just come to the end hits me all at once. And, with the rain dripping on my face, the tears start coming down. And, I was just like, there's just no way that this could be happening. Like everything is going so well that how could, you start throwing those things out like everyone else, like, God, why me? Like I've done everything right. Why? And for whatever reason, that just wasn't going to be my path. And so I was pretty devastated, I'll be honest. There were several weeks after that, I walked off the track and kind of went into a depression, a pretty bad depression state. I was drinking, and literally every day I'd wake up and I'd go down to the corner store and get like a whole case of 40-ounce Millers, and just go back
Miller
to my place. Yeah. And drink because I was on crutches and just walking around. So I literally crutching myself down to the mini market to get 40s and crutching myself back up to my place. And I was just done. I had given up on my Olympic dream, given up on myself. And, the universe works in really weird ways, because there was something inside me that obviously hadn't been completed. And I had somebody, when one door shuts, another one opens. That's absolutely true. Because I also have a saying that's, when opportunity knocks, open the door, at least see what's there. You never know. And I had an opportunity.
If you don't like it, you can shut it again, right?
Right?
Oh, yeah, no, I don't like that.
And so, somebody that, a gal who was acting as my agent at the time when I was running track was like, she comes up to my place and sees like this chaos of my house with bottles laying everywhere and probably just smelled like death. But she's like,
it reminds me of Thor in Endgame, right?
Yeah,
he's all fat and just beer everywhere.
Yeah,
playing Xbox all day.
Yeah. My agent does that too. Just comes over and walks in. I'm like, I'm sorry, I can't. Hold on, let me get dressed for the show.
America.
Yeah. So she's like, well, hey, like, what do you think about training for bobsled? And I was like, what in the hell is bobsled?
My kids, let me tell you this. So I went downstairs, and then my little boy comes up to me. He's like, what are you wearing? He's 8. He's like, Dad, it's not even the 4th of July. What are you doing? I was like, when you interview an Olympic bobsledder, you dress up in a romper, okay?
Right.
Shush. And he's like, what's bobsledding? I was like, I failed. I failed as a human. You've not seen Cool Runnings? Like, come on, Einstein dry, and you push him down a hill. Like, let's do this. And so today we're gonna watch some Cool Runnings later with the boys.
Nice. Perfect. And what's funny, that like sets up like the whole story here as well, because I had no idea what bobsled was. I had no idea that there was any Winter Olympics, let alone Winter Olympics in our own backyard. And so my agent is like, well, hey, here, watch this movie. And I'm like, okay, what's it called? Cool Runnings. So,
see? Sanka, you dead, man?
Right? And I was like, you have to carry an egg and do this bobsled thing?
Yes, the lucky egg.
So I'm watching this movie about bobsled, and I'm like, oh, seems kind of interesting. And it wasn't until I got to watch videos of the U.S. team competing in St. Moritz, Switzerland, and I saw the real power and athleticism it took to be a bobsled athlete. And I was like, that looks pretty cool. And I remember in our camp with my agent and my coaches and my family, we were like, what if we could actually write this story that you grew up here on the streets of Salt Lake City and turned your life around to compete at the Olympics in Salt Lake City? And we're like, no way. There's no, like, how could this all potentially come to this point like this, right? And have the Olympics in your own city, in your own state. And the reality at the end, we're like, we've got nothing to lose. And all we have to do is take everything that we had in track and field and put it over here into this bobsled bucket. And like, let's just go for it. Why, it's like one of those things like, why not me? And,
okay, so let me hit on that because
yeah.
you, man, this is so powerful for those that are watching it. And I don't know if you caught it, but what if you wrote the story and you envisioned this story before it was ever even written, before any how-tos or anything were put in place? You just had the vision. What if we wrote the story about this guy that had this background and just created this life that's totally different? He got injured and now he's an Olympic champion. Like, you write this story before you ever live into it. It doesn't even exist yet.
Yeah.
There's a power in that.
Yeah. I mean, like, yeah, exactly what you're saying. We're going to write this story. We're going to build our architecture exactly how we want it to look. And, mind you, we only had 1 year and 3 months to pull this off. And how unheard of is that to go from, go into a sport that you don't even know at an Olympic level and think that you're going to go into it and go to the Olympics. I was not favored by a lot of bobsled athletes when I came into the sport, simply because they're like, oh, who's this guy coming out of nowhere, right? And I remember one guy who's actually a friend of mine now, but he's like, you don't belong here. Like, who do you think you are? And I just turned to him. I said, hey, listen, like, my goal and my dream was always to be an Olympic athlete. It didn't matter if it was in track and field, freaking men's pairs figure skating, or bobsled. Like, I'm going to the Olympics. And I said, I've done everything I need to do to be here. I hope that you've done everything you need to do to be here as well. And we just left it at that. And, lo and behold,
if it was in men's pairs figure skating or something like that, I would have showed up the same.
Right? No, I mean, I think we would have been partners. Like,
I'm pretty good.
So, again, we were just like, you know what? And that's what life should be all about, right? Why not me? Why can't I write my story? Why can't I build my architecture exactly how I want it to look? And that's what we did, and just went for it. And, 1 year and 3 months later, I'm on the Olympic team, winning the first Olympic medal for the U.S. in over 46 years. And so not only did I make the Olympic team and set history for my name, I set history for my country, and all in the same, story, if you will. And, the first thing that I did when we actually accomplished that, and I remember, in the flower ceremony, we've already won, silver medal. And the first thought came into my head is like, reflecting back, when I was that 7th grade kid getting in trouble and having that vision of that dream, how many years ago that I eventually someday wanted to be an Olympic athlete and represent my country and change my stars. And, that's along with that, when I had an opportunity to go out on the medal stand and see my whole entire family and my grandma, who never had to take me in, but chose to do so, holding up a sign that says, son, I told you that dreams come true. And, the tears are just, kind of like I'm trying to hold them back now, but tears.
They're coming. Let them go, because they're coming for me too.
And, the tears are just streaming down my face. And like, even still today, I think about that moment, and it's still so surreal that, you had this massive goal and this massive dream in life. And, you had people that supported you, but then you have the naysayers as well that told you should never, ever accomplish that. And realizing that you not only accomplished it, you rocked it, and you don't even have to say anything to anybody. You can mic drop and everybody really gets put in their face. Right. And that was just, obviously a huge goal and a dream that I accomplished with the help of a lot of other people. Right. But then it also set up my desires and my dreams to continue to strive for more. And then, that's when I obviously started having an opportunity to tell my story and then be able to give back and understanding how my story could help other kids in that situation, but that not only other kids, it could help everyday people in life. It could help people in business about, striving and building your architecture by design and living a life with integrity and all these different things. And that just continued to, set everything up for the rest of my life and things that how I live my life today.
I keep cutting off Ryan on these comments. It's like a competition. But
perfect.
Man, it's we got 11 viewers, 11 comments, 11 synchronicity. Earlier we were 10. Big fan of synchronicity and watching the pathways and the signs that come, the things that are unexpected, and it might show up in the form of people. It might show up in the form of opportunities. I mean, how could you have predicted that your agent would come in and say, hey, let's do bobsledding? It's not even on your radar. It's not even a possibility in your world where you're at.
Thank God they made you watch Cool Runnings.
Right?
Yeah. I don't know what your life would have been like if you wouldn't have watched Cool Runnings, because that's what I was most concerned about, that Bill had not seen Cool Runnings.
You would honestly be probably shocked that Cool Runnings has come up so many times in my life that I just accept it for what it is. Because, we did finally fulfill a bucket list about 4 weeks ago, I think, that one of the original Jamaican guys with Cool Runnings hit me up and he's like, let's do a podcast together. I'm like, that's funny because I've always wanted to do a podcast with you. So
I thought you were going to say like John Candy visited you in a dream or in your sleep,
right.
Like just, whoa, there's John Candy.
He's like,
he's back.
So how do people find you? Because I know you're a keynote speaker. Do you have programs as well?
Yeah. So, I do keynote speaking still even during COVID, which is nice because as I mentioned before, that all got wiped out. And then I do, we'll call it life coaching, but, I have a program that encompasses everything 360. So we're not just working on one little thing here and there. It's, helping people take their lives, whether they're individuals or groups, and really trying to help them figure out